أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Eid Mubarak to everyone, the coming of the month of Sha'ban and the waladat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Hazrat Abbas, and today, which was the birthday anniversary of Imam Ali ibn Hussein as-Sajjad. I would like to take this time to congratulate all of you. And tonight we'll be talking about these guiding lights, the life of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Hazrat Abbas, who is a sincere and devoted follower of Imam Hussein. And when you see the traditions that talk about Hazrat Abbas, that the martyrs, all of them, wish they had the position of Abbas that he has from the Shuhada. He has the best of places that any shaheed can have. And about Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, that we see so much throughout books of history about our Imam, that you see even in the Sunni world from, for example, Ibn Shahab al-Zuhri, a narrator in the book of Sahih Bukhari, from 9,000 maybe narrations, this Ibn Shahab al-Zuhri maybe compiled 1,000 narrations, 9,000 of them. 1,000 is for Ibn Shahab al-Zuhri. He mentions the afqahul qunas, or ma ra'aytu ahadan afqahu min. I have not seen anyone more knowledgeable than Ali ibn al-Hussein. Who is this? One of the top tabi'een of Ahl Sunnah. One of the first people to write the seerah of the Prophet. One of the narrators from 9,000 narrations in Sahih Bukhari, 1,000 of them, that he says, the most knowledgeable person I've ever seen is Ali ibn al-Hussein. So therefore we come to the conclusion that the Imams are not to be compared with normal people. And their knowledge is not knowledge that is given from man, it is given from God. And they have a divine duty to guide and to continue the message of Islam. To introduce Imam Hussein alayhi salam in hadith, and I'm sure many of you have a special attachment to Imam Hussein. Many of you have done ziyarat of him. And as you know, during the 3rd and 4th of Sha'ban, many people go to the holy city of Karbala. But if you were also to look at Baqi of Imam Sajjad, closed off. Nobody can visit for his birthday anniversary. The Prophet of Allah is mentioned in the book of Kamal al-Din wa Tamam al-Ni'mah of Shaykh al-Saduq. دخلت على رسول الله وعنده أبي ibn Ka'b. Narrator says, I entered, Imam Hussein alayhi salam actually says, I entered the house, the place where Rasulullah was, and with him was Ubay ibn Ka'b. فقال رسول الله مرحبا بك يا أبا عبد الله. So greetings, for example, to you, Aba Abdullah. As you know, Imam Hussein alayhi salam was at what age during the life of the Holy Prophet? He was born in the year of the 4th after Hijri. So the 4th to the 11th, which the Prophet passed away, he's around 6 years of age, something like that. In this tradition, somewhere around there, maybe 4 or 5, 6 years of age. And usually Arabs they have a kunya when a person has their first son, for example, first child, they call him by the name of their first son. But here Imam Hussein alayhi salam is so young, he does not have a son obviously. But his kunya that the Prophet gives in hadith is Abu Abdullah, the father of the slave of Allah. That itself is a discussion. What does Abu Abdullah mean? Because usually when you talk about, for example, Abu al-Qasim, Rasulullah had a son named Qasim, for example. Abu al-Hasan, Imam Ali had a son named Hassan. But in this tradition, it says Abu Abdullah, and he's 5 or 6 years old. Then he continues, Ya Zayna samawati wal ard, O beauty, adornment of the heavens, of the skies and the earth. That Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a beauty of the skies and the earth. And as you notice today, if you think about one of the most beautiful places adornment that you can go to, if you could go to any place, the most beautiful place, the best experiences that you had, if you have gone, it is the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They say, how sad is it a person that has not visited Imam Hussein alayhi salam? But they say, how sadder is it if a person does visit Imam Hussein? Because after that, they get that post-ziyarat depression, we call it. Post-ziyarat depression. Coming from heaven back to the world. They get depressed. فَقَالَ لَهُ أُبَيْ وَكَيْفَ يَكُونُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. How can this be true? How can he be Zainu Samawati wal Ard while you are the only one? There's nobody that is the adornment and beauty of this world and the skies except for you. How can this be? Imagine Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a child, 5 or 6 years old. The narrator is confused. So the Prophet continues in hadith, Ya Ubay, وَالَّذِي بَعَثَنِي بِالْحَقِّ نَبِيًّا إِنَّ الْحُسَيْنِ ibn Ali في السماء أكبر منه في الأرض. أكبر منه في الأرض. Hussein alayhi salam, I swear that is higher, is greater in the skies, in the sky than he is in the earth. Meaning the way that the angels perceive him, the way that Allah knows Imam Hussein is different than you and people and normal people in this world perceive Imam Hussein. He's much greater than you can imagine. فَإِنَّهُ مَكْتُوبٌ عَنْ يَمِينِ الْعَرْشِ. Then the Prophet continues about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It is written on the right side of the Arsh. Arsh of God, we don't really know exactly what it is. It means throne. Now some say this is the manifestation of, place of manifestation of God's power. The Arsh of God, it is written, a very important place, that Hussein alayhi salam is misbahun hadin, that he is the lantern of guidance, wa safinatun najah. So this is the highest place, and one of the places where in Rasulullah went to Mi'raj. This is where we say Rasulullah went to the Arsh. So there it's written that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is the lantern of guidance, and he is the ship of salvation. As you see in the Battle of Karbala, Imam Hussein alayhi salam was the ship of salvation for the other 71 members. And all they had to do was to submit to Imam Hussein. All they had to do is testify to Imam Hussein. All they had to do is not to have any doubt as to what Imam Hussein alayhi salam is doing. And who did that the best in Karbala? Hazrat Abbas. Hazrat Abbas did that the best. That's why he has the highest position. So he is the ship of salvation. وَإِمَامٌ غَيْرُ وَهْنٍ. He is the Imam that is never weak, that is strong. وَعِزٍ has might, فَخْرٍ honor, وَبَحْرِ الْعِلْم is the sea of knowledge. وَذُخْرٍ فَذُخْرٌ فَلِمَا لَا يَكُنْ كَذَلِكَ. And he is a dhakhira, and he is a treasure for us. When you look at this tradition, you see that the way that we perceive Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that you cannot truly, with all the different speeches and lectures given the 3rd of Sha'ban, with all the different hadith and narrations and all the different verses of Quran, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam's position is much higher than we in the world can understand. And that having, for example, 20 million zawar for Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Arba'in, that is nothing. That is just scratching the surface of the reality of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But if you were to look at one part of Imam Hussein's blessed life, and you want to analyze the event of Karbala, which is the event that separated Imam Hussein than other Imams, we know him from the martyrdom, the battle of Karbala, what attribute or trait would you say that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is unique in having? Even though all the Imams have this trait, which one manifested and showed itself the most? Maybe you would say it is the courage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It is the sheer bravery that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had. That how he stood up to tyranny, how he stood up with his family members in the caravan, fighting against odds that in this world, usually a battle would not take place with such odds. With 72 versus 10,000, 72 versus 30,000. And at the end of Ashura, the end of the afternoon, the day of Ashura, you see that Imam Hussein is one against tens of thousands of people. So you would say that it is the courage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that sets him apart, even though all the Imams were courageous. And we have tradition that Imam Hassan alayhi salam, for example, inherits the generosity, the karama, for example, and siyada of Rasulullah. But Imam Hussein inherits the courage of Rasulullah. So he learns this bravery from his father, from Rasulullah, his grandfather. All the Imams were brave in everything they did. Imam Ali ibn Hussein alayhi salam in Sham, in his speech, was very brave. But each Imam is known for one attribute. For example, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam is known for his patience, kadhmul ghayth, when it comes to his anger. So each Imam is known and has a test, has a different situation where they show their perfection. Tonight's discussion is going to be about courage, a trait that we need to have as Muslims, a trait that if you do not have, you cannot be a proper Muslim. Can someone be a Muslim and yet be a coward? Be fearful? Can they perform their wajibat and not be courageous? At least you know this better, that practicing Islam in this country, you need to be courageous. If you're not courageous, you will not be able to do your wajibat. You cannot do your obligations. One of them, for example, that you need courage is salat, is prayer. Yes, praying at Yasin Center is easy. Maybe having the courage to drive here and getting out of the couch or whatever, that's something else. But praying at Yasin is easy. Praying at your home is easy. But I'm sure all of you had to pray in a situation where you did not want to pray or is difficult for you. Maybe it was at the airport. Maybe if you're a student, it was on campus. Maybe if you're working, it was at work, or there's a meeting or something, and my salat was becoming qada or lapse, and I had to pray. So my question to you is this: can a person be a true Muslim without being courageous and saying, look, I don't care what people see and look at me. I even know it looks maybe awkward for them. Do you see someone bending down? Maybe sometimes you're in the parking lot and you're bending down, they think you're doing something to their car, for example. They don't know what you're doing, right? Because you're praying. So it's awkward. But a Muslim has to be brave. A Muslim has to trust in Allah. And if he does not have shaja'ah or she does not have shaja'ah, they cannot be a good Muslim. That's why in this one, example that I give, very important to teach your children to pray in public, to pray and do salat and practice with them when they're young, in places where nobody wants you to pray. I remember when I was at the university, I'm not giving an example of being very courageous. If you're child does not have this courage, they'll go to the university and be afraid to pray. I would like to go sometimes to the highest mountain or hill where everyone would see me. I would go and do salat there so the whole university can see me, for example. Not to show off, but sometimes you just want to show that, look, I'm a proud Muslim, for example. But I wouldn't do it all the time, just sometimes, for example. So a college student, a public school student, needs to have that courage and to be able to say, I'm going to pray. Where else do we need courage? And where else, if we lack it, we're not a true Muslim? For example, sisters know this better than obviously brothers because of their hijab, because they cannot assimilate in a way and show themselves to be non-Muslims. Wherever they go, everyone knows they're Muslim. The brothers have it easy. You can do taqiyya if you want. You can say you're a different madhab. You can say you're a different religion or whatever. But the sisters cannot do this. From far, they don't know what religion you have. Even the beard, for example, it's very in style now. Many people are putting the beard and they're saying, mashallah, that's a great beard. They're saying, how do you do this, for example? But the sister has to be courageous to have hijab. And the mothers teach their daughters that you have to be courageous. There are times that maybe sisters are alone. Maybe they're, say, for example, they're young, their brothers, their mother, father are not there, their husbands are not there, they're all alone. And it's an intimidating atmosphere. But they have to have the hijab. They have to be there sometimes. So without courage, if you understand, you cannot be a Muslim, you cannot have hijab. So all the sisters that you see, that they are wearing hijab. And it is a little bit easier now, but times change all the time. We had times 20 years ago that, it was very difficult for sisters to have hijab. They were very nervous, they're very scared, but they still kept it on. So you see, you have to have courage. 3, when it comes to your job, you're employed, for example, or your employer, and there is a business meeting, and they tell me you cannot shake hands. And sometimes this is an important deal for me. What am I going to do? You need to have courage to say, my religion, I respect the other gender, for example, but the best way that we see is, for us not to, for example, we cannot touch each other, but we can greet each other like this, for example, with the other, or whatever way you want to introduce it to them. So you need to be courageous when it comes to work. You need to be courageous when it comes to, for example, company meetings, and there's alcohol and tables, for example. And you need to tell them, one of my friends, I was speaking to him, he says, for me, the easiest way I notice, after all these years working, is just to be upfront. Sometimes Muslims, we like to hide, and we don't really want to tell everyone the truth. He says, it's easy for me, and he works in the Silicon Valley, so maybe they're a little bit more accepting there. But he says, I'm very honest with them, and I just tell them, I'm a practicing Muslim. I don't shake hands with the other gender. I don't attend alcohol, and I don't have pork, and I need a place to pray. And that is, for a lot of times for that boss, the manager, he says, well, he has morals. He's got rules. He has, dignity. He's courageous, to tell me this. So then from then on, he says it's much easier afterwards. But if they don't know, you say, for example, you don't show your religion, you don't say what you are, then you might get yourself into trouble sometimes. Or maybe you need to find a job or work for somebody that is a little bit more lenient, for example, or flexible. Of course, discrimination is not allowed because of religion, but you might have that, awkward feeling at some jobs. So therefore, you understand to be courageous is a part of our religion, part of our deen. And even when it comes to the family life, a person has to be courageous when it comes to the family, meaning that sometimes maybe there are discussions we need to have with our spouses that are hard, but that communication needs to exist. Or, for example, a hard discussion with my kids or kids with their parents, and they need to have discussions. There are things they're afraid of sharing, for example. They're afraid, to say this, and yet they have to come to their parents and have that courage to open up and communicate. So this, having courage, will also make you one of the best fathers, mothers, children, for example, spouses. So what can we do to instill courage in us. And what can we learn from Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Let's recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal fajr. When we look at one of the attributes of the men of deen, they need to have courage. Anyone that is a divine guide to be able to spread Islam, to be able to defend Islam, they need to have courage. When you look at the letter that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was written to, that he writes to the people of Basra, and in this letter they give him protection, for example, and he's writing to them about the courage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that he tells them, وَقَدْ دَعَوْتَ إِلَى الْأَمَانِ وَالْبِرِّ وَالصَّلَاةِ فَخَيْرُ الْأَمَانِ أَمَانُ اللَّهِ. That you have called to protection, for example, and you have called for good, and you have called for connection of family. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, فَخَيْرُ الْأَمَانِ أَمَانُ اللَّهِ. But remember, the best protection is the protection of Allah. Basically, I don't need human, man-made protection. Because if Allah wills something, it will happen. I don't need you. I need this protection. So when we open up this topic of courage, let's look at some of the traditions. We have the tradition from Imam Ali alayhi salam, الشجاعة عز حاضر. In Quran al-Hikam. Courage is a might at hand. Izzun hadir is might at hand. It is power that you have. If you really are courageous, you have this power that others don't have. And it's with you all the time. It's as if it's a weapon, a might. Or two, الشجاعة نصرة حاضرة. Courage is a ready victory. You've already won. When you are courageous, you've already won. But yet, if you are fearful and if you are scared, you've already lost, you can say. Or we have in the other traditions from Imam Ali, لو تميزت الأشياء لكان الصدق مع الشجاعة. So we can divide courage into different parts. One part of courage is divided into akhlaq, into ethics. And in this tradition, we can say it's showing us this, that if you were to divide courage or things into different parts, you would match لَكَانَ الصِّدْقِ مَعَ الشُّجَاعَةِ. You would match truthfulness with courage. How is truthfulness matched with courage? Because a person that is courageous speaks the truth. وَكَانَ الْجُبْنُ مَعَ الْكِذْبِ. And dishonesty, cowardice, is with lying. Do you ever see the person that lies? This is about the relationship between courage and ethics, courage and ethics. Do you ever see the person that lies? That person is the person that is afraid. A lot of times, maybe these aren't lies like that, but how do I look, for example? It's very easy to say, look great, for example. And how did I speak? It was best speech ever, for example. They're afraid. They don't say the truth, for example. So remember that the more courageous you are, the more honest you'll be. And you can have courage when it comes to ethics. وَقَدْ سُئِلَ عَنَّا الشَّجَاعَةِ. Imam Hassan alayhi salam mentions. These are the signs of courage. If you want to see who's a courageous person, see the person that speaks the truth. The person that lies is a coward. Imam Hassan alayhi salam in tradition, in Tuhaf al-Uqul, he was asked about shaja'ah or shaja'ah. Mawafaqatul aqran. The first part is to stand up against one's opponents. Was-sabru 'inda at-ta'an. And when to be patient in the face of criticism. To stand up against someone. Again, children that are being raised. Some parents, the way that they always raise their kids, always, it's okay if they do that. It's okay, it's okay. Well, you also have to teach that child at a young age courage, so they don't get bullied. Of course, we don't say to encourage them to start a school fight, for example. No. Tell the teacher, stick up for themselves. Be a self-advocate. Tell, what are you doing? I'm not saying about, physical, but some children are raised in a society or family that they're always, it's okay to abuse them. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be bullied. But that child, you need to train and to teach as to be courageous and to stand up for themselves. Obviously, if worse comes to worse, and the worst thing is self-defense. But that child needs to learn to be courageous. So how do you know if someone is courageous? Muwafaqatul aqran. He stands up against his opponents. وَالصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ التَّعَانِ. And he is patient when he faces criticism. When we look at some of the traditions about what causes courage, I want to share this nice tradition from Imam Ali alayhi salam. Actually, this is a nice story. This part isn't about courage, but it's a nice story. There's one of our scholars by the name of Allama Ja'fari. And he has written different books. Maybe you've read some of his books or commentaries of Nahj al-Balagh, or different books he has. He says once he was in Denmark, and there's a conference with different sociologists, possibly professors, and everyone had a share to teach about the worth of man. He writes himself, he talks about this event himself. So in Denmark, they're talking about what is man's worth. And the different sociologists give different examples. And then he says, it's his turn, as a Shia sheikh, studied the hadith of Ahlul Bayt, Sayyid Quran, he gives an answer too. And he says that man's worth relies on what he loves, what he is interested in, what he is interested in. If he loves, for example, his entire life, his entire desire is about owning a nice house, then his worth will be equal to that house. He's his worth, that house. Because whatever he likes and desires and seeks, that is his worth. And if he wants to seek, for example, a nice car to drive, then man's worth is only limited to that car. But if he seeks God and loves God and is trying to find God, then his worth is equal to that of God. And once he said this in Denmark, they started giving a standing ovation and clapping. All these professors, sociologists. We had the Shia scholar that says man's worth is equal to what he seeks. And then he sat down, and then he saw that they kept clapping, and then he stood up again. And he told them that I have not said something new. All I have said is something that Ali alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, said, say, for example, 1400 years ago. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Nahj al-Balagh is saying 47 when he said, قَدْرُ الرَّجُلِ عَلَى قَدْرِ هِمَّتِهِ. The worth of a person is equal to the worth of what he desires, of the extent of his ambition. قَدْرِ هِمَّتِهِ. Whatever is his himmah, whatever he seeks, he wants, that's his worth. And then this part of the hadith was sidqu. This is not from the story, this is now just part of the hadith. وَالصِّدْقُهُ عَلَى قَدْرِ مُرُوَّتِهِ وَالشَّجَاعَتُهُ عَلَى قَدْرِ أَنَفَتِهِ. So his courage is in the proportion of his dignity. So what causes the root of courage is when a person has dignity and doesn't want to be humiliated. When he has self-value of himself, he values himself as being an important person. That will cause him to be courageous. But if he views himself to be worthless, he doesn't have self-confidence, and they make fun of him, and he says, I deserve to be made fun of because I do not have any value, then he will not be courageous. What does this teach us as parents? Is that whenever you teach your kids, you teach them self-value. You teach them you are an important person. For example, your ancestry is this. You came to Islam like this. Your father did this. Your mother did this. You bring that child and you give them self-worth. Because in the tradition, it mentions that وَالشَّجَاعَةُ عَلَى قَدْرِ أَنَفَتِهِ. However much he wants to stay away from, to the extent of his dignity, however dignity he has, he will be courageous. And Imam Ali alayhi salam in tradition also mentions the same thing, that the root of shaja'a are these three things. Imam Ali says. One, they are self-esteem, to have self-esteem. Two, to have dignity. Three, seeking good reputation. So if we want to cause ourselves to be courageous people, not that you are in a way bragging about yourself or overconfident or arrogant, that's obviously not allowed, but that you give yourself worth. And if you look at main people that are actually successful in life, in the business world, in sports, in religion, they gave themselves lots of value. They had lots of self-confidence. They had lots of trust in God. So if you think of yourself that I cannot do, I'm too weak, it's just impossible, then you'll never be courageous enough. And actually that's what, I was looking at some different articles about how to gain courage. That is actually the traditions talked about it, and also today they say, number one step, they say, is see yourself as courageous. View yourself as a courageous person. And that goes back to view yourself with self-confidence. View yourself with worth. Two, get comfortable with mistakes. A courageous person, maybe sometimes you're in school, it's teamwork, or you're at work. You have ideas, you have plans, but you're afraid to say it because you're afraid to be wrong. But everyone is wrong in a way. There's no 100% answer. The Imams know. We always try our best, and what our aql for now says to do, that is what we do. But if we are afraid of mistakes, we're afraid of saying the wrong thing, then you'll always be fearful. So get accustomed to making mistakes. And you notice the first time you do something, it's horrible. I know lecturers that the first time they gave speeches, they had notes. They were so afraid. And then their notes fell, for example, on the ground. They mixed them all up. They're so afraid. Later on, they practiced and made more mistakes. And then they became one of the most prominent lecturers or speakers, for example, after they made so many mistakes. And if you look at the life of everyone who has right now perfected a different field, you see that at the beginning they made so many different mistakes. But the difference was that they were not afraid of making mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, just try to make the least amount of mistakes. The last thing that actually in this article I was looking at about being courageous, it says that look for heroes. The last thing that I'm mentioning is look for heroes. Have examples in your minds of courage. And if you really look at this, and I want you to take the waladat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and incorporate it deeply in your lives, that any time you're facing a difficult time, think of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. Think of how much power he had, how much shaja his sister, Lady Zainab alayhi salam had. When she spoke against, false information, when she spoke up against untruth, the falsehood. So we have one of the best examples in our heritage, the Imams alayhimus salam, Karbala. And this causes us to refer to them in times that we are afraid, in times that we need courage. That is why I recommend when we have waladats, You can have a mini majlis or mini mawlid in your house. I have, there's different books published. If you need to know them, I can give you some of their names or the publishers. That they publish stories of each imam. And a child, when they're growing up, each imam and a story by the imam. So when it's the waladat, for example, of Imam Hussein, you tell them something about Imam Hussein. Then you have a little mawlid for them, or a little majlis for them. If it's azadari, it's azah. If it's a mawlid, you have a mawlid for them, for example. And you have a little majlis, and this child remembers, especially when it's on that day. This child remembers Imam Hussein or the imams, and remembers a story, and learns how to cry for them, learns how to be happy for them, and learns how to celebrate. This brings a lot of barakat for that child, and it causes, as we said, this last part is where these imams need to be heroes for our children. And if they don't know anything about them, then how can they be heroes? So to make the lives of the imams practical, especially when it comes to their waladat and birthdays and different occurrences. May Allah inshallah give us the ziyarat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. May Allah give us courage and make us courageous to fight against oppression, to speak the truth. May Allah give us the courage to be able to fulfill our obligations and wajibat. May Allah give us courage to come back to our family members and spouses and those that are disengaged with us, to reapproach them and ask for forgiveness. May Allah expedite the return of Imam Mahdi, who's looking for courageous followers, and make us of his sincere and devout companions, inshallah, with his salawat ala Muhammad.